The human eye can miss what science cannot. When a wealthy art collector disappeared from her mansion, leaving her priceless collection untouched, the investigation seemed to hit dead ends at every turn. 4 suspects, 4 perfect alibis, and 1 arrogant challenge. Search all you want, but in the shadows of ornate frames and behind practiced smiles, a microscopic truth waited to be discovered. In the world of priceless art and elite collectors, arrogance is a dangerous trait. When Evelyn Montgomery vanished without a trace, one suspect dared to mock Detective Thea Blackwood with the words, "Search all you want." Little did they know that a droplet of blood, smaller than a pinhead, would become their undoing. The Montgomery estate stood like a sentinel against the October sky, its imposing silhouette cutting through the morning mist that rolled in from the Massachusetts coastline. Detective Theodora "Thea" Blackwood stepped out of her unmarked sedan, her trained eyes already scanning the perimeter as she approached the grand entrance. Yellow police tape fluttered in the autumn breeze, an incongruous sight against the manicured perfection of the estate's gardens. 3 days, Captain Emerson said, falling in step beside her. She's been missing for 3 days before anyone thought to check on her. The housekeeper called it in when she arrived yesterday morning. Thea nodded, pulling on latex gloves as she ducked under the tape. No. Signs of forced entry? None. Alarm was properly set, deactivated with the correct code at 7 a.m. yesterday when the housekeeper arrived. The foyer opened up to a grand hallway lined with artwork that even Thea, with her limited knowledge of fine art, recognized as museum-worthy. Monet, Degas, Rothko, millions of dollars in paintings hung undisturbed on the walls. "Nothing stolen?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "That's the thing," Emerson replied. "Not a single piece missing. If this was a robbery, they left behind a fortune." Thea moved through the house methodically, noting the lack of overturned furniture or signs of struggle. Evelyn Montgomery's purse sat on an antique console table, her phone charging beside it. In the kitchen, a half-empty cup of tea had left a ring on a marble countertop. "Her car is gone," Emerson added. "A Mercedes S-Class. We've put out an alert." Thea paused at the entrance to what appeared to be a study. Something about the room felt off, though nothing was visibly disturbed. Bookshelves lined the walls, and a large mahogany desk commanded the center of the space. "Who found this room like this?" Thea asked. "The housekeeper says she doesn't come in here often. It's Ms. Montgomery's private workspace." Thea circled the desk slowly. The surface was neat, too neat perhaps. A small silver letter opener lay perfectly aligned with the edge of a leather blotter. Thea pulled open the drawers one by one, finding nothing. Unusual until she reached the bottom right drawer. There, tucked beneath a stack of stationery, was a small note card with elegant handwriting. "I know what you did." "Captain," she called, holding up the note with her gloved hand. "I need forensics in here, and I want the full background on Evelyn Montgomery. Family, friends, business associates, everyone. Already on it," Emerson replied. "Her son Nathaniel is flying in from Chicago. Estranged for years, apparently. But he's her only living relative. The assistant, Luciana something, is waiting to speak with you." As Thea examined the room more closely, she noticed a faint smudge on the corner of the desk that might have been wiped clean. The window behind the desk was locked from the inside, but the curtain cord hung at an unusual angle. "Someone tried very hard to make it look like nothing happened here," Thea murmured to herself. "But something did happen to Evelyn Montgomery, and this room knows what it was." Outside, the autumn wind picked up, sending crimson leaves dancing across the expansive lawn. Somewhere in this perfect picture of wealth and privilege, a deadly secret was hiding in plain sight, waiting for Thea to uncover it. The Montgomery estate's lavish drawing room seemed to shrink under the weight of suspicion as Detective Thea Blackwood studied the 4 people seated before her, each connected to Evelyn Montgomery, each with reasons that might explain her mysterious disappearance. Outside, rain began to fall, droplets racing down the floor-to-ceiling windows like tears. Nathaniel Montgomery sat rigidly in an antique armchair, his tailored suit unable to disguise the tension in his shoulders. At 35, he had his mother's sharp cheekbones and penetrating gaze, but none of her warmth. "I haven't spoken to my mother in 7 years, he stated flatly. "Yes, I returned to town 3 weeks ago, but for business reasons. Pure coincidence." Thea noted how his fingers tapped rhythmically against the chair's arm. "And where were you the night she disappeared?" "Chicago. Dinner with clients until midnight, then back to my hotel. The Langham. Check their security cameras." Beside him, Luciana Vasquez twisted the silver bracelet on her wrist, a gift from Evelyn she'd mentioned earlier. As Evelyn's personal assistant for 15 years, her knowledge of the household was unparalleled. Ms. Montgomery was acting strangely in the weeks before this happened, Luciana said, her voice barely above a whisper, taking calls in private, changing appointments last minute. And you were recently added to her will, Thea remarked, watching Luciana's face carefully. Color flooded Luciana's cheeks. A small provision for my loyalty. I was with my sister the entire weekend. We were preparing for her wedding. 20 people can confirm my whereabouts. Vincent Hargrove cleared his throat loudly, drawing attention to himself as he paced by the window. The rival art dealer's presence commanded the room, his silver hair and immaculate suit marking him as Evelyn's equal in the rarefied world of high-end art collection. "This is absurd," he declared, gesturing expansively. "Evelyn and I were competitors, yes, but also old friends. Our disagreement over the Callahan collection was purely business. Multiple witnesses saw you arguing with her at the Rosen Gallery 3 days before she disappeared," Thea countered. "One described it as intensely heated." Vincent's laugh was cold, dismissive. "Passionate discussions about art are our form of foreplay, detective. Besides, I was hosting a dinner party at my home the night in question. 16 guests, including a federal judge. Search all you want," he added with a smirk. "You won't find anything to connect me to whatever has happened to Evelyn." The fourth person in the room remained silent until addressed. Dominic. Reeves was Evelyn's gardener of 8 years, his weathered hands and simple clothes at odds with the opulence surrounding him. "You have access to the grounds at all hours," Thea noted, "and Ms. Montgomery's neighbor mentioned seeing you here late at night occasionally." Dominic nodded slowly. "I sometimes work evenings when it's cooler. Ms. Montgomery would bring me tea." His voice softened. "She knew all about my daughter's medical bills, helped without making me feel like charity." "Kau seemed to know a lot about her art collection for a gardener," Thea observed. "She talked while I worked, said most people only wanted her for her collection, but the plants and I just wanted sunlight." He met Thea's gaze directly. "I was at the hospital with my daughter all weekend. Nurses can confirm." As the interview concluded, Captain Emerson pulled Thea aside. "All 4 have alibis we can verify. The Sun's hotel has him on camera. The assistant has wedding preparations with witnesses. Hargrove has a dinner party full of Boston elites, and the gardener was at Boston Children's Hospital." Thea watched the suspects disperse. Nathaniel to his mother's office, Vincent to his waiting luxury car, Luciana to make calls cancelling Evelyn's appointments, and Dominic to tend the gardens despite the rain. 4 perfect alibis, Thea murmured. 2 perfect, maybe. People with nothing to hide don't usually have their innocence so thoroughly documented. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows like impatient fingers, urging her to look deeper, to find what others had missed. The soft blue light of the computer screen illuminated Dr. Samira Patel's focused expression as her fingers danced across the keyboard. The forensic specialist had transformed a corner of Evelyn Montgomery's study into a high-tech workspace, surrounded by equipment that looked alien against the room's old-world elegance. "Here," Samira said, pointing to the screen. The computer was accessed multiple times between 1 and 3 a.m. over the past several months, always the same files, provenance documents for recent acquisitions. Thea leaned closer, studying the timestamps. Could someone have remotely accessed it? Possible, but unlikely given the security system, Samira replied. More interesting is what I found when examining those documents. She pulled up a file displaying certification papers for a Degas. This provenance has been altered, subtly but definitely. Whoever did it knows their way around both digital forensics and art authentication. Thea straightened, pieces beginning to connect in her mind. Someone was creating a paper trail for forgeries, or obscuring the origin of authentic pieces, Samira suggested. Either way, it's sophisticated work. A knock at the door interrupted them as Captain Emerson entered, his expression grim. "Media's getting restless. Montgomery's disappearance is headline. News now. The mayor's breathing down my neck for progress." "Tell him we're pursuing multiple angles," Thea replied, unfazed by the pressure. "Any word on the offshore accounts?" "Financial Crimes Unit confirms it. Monthly payments of $50,000 to a Cayman Islands account for the past 2 years. They're trying to trace the beneficiary." Thea's phone buzzed with a text message. "The neighbor across the street wants to speak with me again," she said, already heading for the door. "Says she remembered something important. Mrs. Eleanor Fitzgerald, an elegant woman in her 70s, waited in her sunroom overlooking the Montgomery estate. "I couldn't sleep last night thinking about poor Evelyn," she explained, pouring tea from a silver service. "And then I remembered. The lights." "Lights?" Thea prompted. "In Evelyn's study. I saw them at 2 a.m. the night she disappeared. I'm certain because my insomnia was acting up, and I noticed them when I went for my prescription." Mrs. Fitzgerald pointed across to the Montgomery estate. "The study lights were on, and I saw a silhouette moving around." Thea felt her pulse quicken. "You're certain about the time?" "Absolutely. I take meticulous notes of when I take my medication. It was 2:17 a.m. precisely." By the time Thea left Mrs. Fitzgerald's home, darkness had fallen. Rather than returning to the precinct, she drove back to the Montgomery estate, now eerily quiet with the forensics team gone. For the day, using the key provided for the investigation, she let herself in and moved through the silent house to the gallery where Evelyn's most prized artworks hung. The security system's soft hum was the only sound as Thea carefully examined each painting, wondering what secrets they might hold. Her flashlight beam traveled slowly across a Monet water lily scene, then a stark Rothko, before landing on a smaller piece tucked between larger works, a delicate portrait attributed to an early 20th century American artist. Something about this painting caught Thea's attention. Unlike the others, which were illuminated by small accent lights, this one seemed deliberately positioned in a shadowed corner. The subject was a young woman with haunting eyes that seemed to follow Thea as she moved. Thea stepped closer, examining the ornate frame. A barely perceptible discoloration marked one corner, something that might be dismissed as an imperfection in the gilding. But Thea's instincts told her otherwise. She took out her phone and called Samira. "I need you to come back to the Montgomery estate. Bring your portable forensic light and the blood detection kit." She stared at the painting, its subject's eyes seeming to challenge her. "I think I've found something everyone missed." "It's definitely blood," Dr. Samira Patel confirmed, her voice hushed despite the empty house around them. Under the blue glow of the forensic light, the tiny stain on the picture frame glowed an eerie luminescent color. Human blood, and from the reaction pattern relatively recent, within the last week, Thea felt a surge of vindication. "Can you get a DNA sample?" Samira nodded, carefully scraping a minute sample into an evidence vial. "I'll rush it through the lab. If it's Evelyn's blood, then someone's lying about what happened here," Thea finished. And they were careless enough to miss this when cleaning up. The next morning dawned grey and threatening, matching Thea's mood as she pored over financial records in her office. The offshore account payments formed a pattern, each following shortly after a major acquisition for Evelyn's collection. Before she could dive deeper, her desk phone rang. "Blackwood," she answered. "It's Samira. The blood is a match for Evelyn Montgomery. And there's more. Trace analysis found microscopic particles of oil paint in the sample." Thea sat up straighter. "Paint from the artwork?" "No. Different composition entirely, like it was transferred from someone who had wet paint on their hands when they touched the frame." With this new information, Thea called Luciana Vasquez to her office. The assistant arrived looking even more strained than during their first meeting, dark circles beneath her eyes. "You told me Ms. Montgomery didn't have any unusual visitors in the days before her disappearance," Thea began without preamble. Luciana twisted her bracelet, a nervous habit. Thea had noticed before. "That's right. Then why did Vincent Hargrove's car pass the security camera at the entrance to Evelyn's neighborhood at 11:43 p.m. the night she disappeared, after his dinner party supposedly ended?" The color drained from Luciana's face. I didn't know." "I think you did," Thea countered. "Just like I think you knew about the forgeries." "Forgeries?" Luciana's surprise seemed genuine. "What are you talking about?" Thea studied her for a moment before changing tactics. "Tell me about Nathaniel's relationship with his mother. Why were they estranged?" Luciana hesitated before answering. "They had a falling out over Evelyn's third husband, Nathaniel's stepfather. Nathaniel accused him of only marrying Evelyn for her money and collection. When Evelyn sided with her husband, Nathaniel left. He only returned after learning about her illness." "Illness?" Thea asked sharply. "What illness?" Luciana's eyes widened in genuine shock. "You don't know? Evelyn was diagnosed with early-onset dementia 6 months ago. Only a few people knew. She was very private about it." This new information sent Thea back to the financial records with fresh eyes. The timeline of payments coincided not just with art acquisitions, but with Evelyn's diagnosis and progression of her condition. Later that afternoon, another piece fell into place when Captain Emerson called. "We found Evelyn's Mercedes," he reported, "abandoned at the Springfield bus terminal, wiped clean of prints. Security cameras were conveniently malfunctioning that night. Springfield is nearly 50 miles away," Thea noted. "Someone wanted to create the impression she fled." "There's something else," Emerson added. "The car's GPS shows it stopped for 17 minutes at a storage facility on the outskirts of town before heading to the bus station." By dusk, Thea was examining Dominic Reeves's groundskeeper shed with a search warrant in hand. The space was meticulously organized, gardening tools hanging on labeled hooks, seed packets arranged alphabetically, fertilizers carefully stored. Too perfect, Thea thought, just like the alibis. Her flashlight beam caught something beneath a workbench, a small splatter of dark material on the concrete floor that someone had attempted to clean. As she crouched to examine it, her phone buzzed with a text from Samira. "Second DNA test confirmed. Blood from the storage facility lock matches Evelyn. Montgomery, we have a crime scene." The storage unit door rolled upward with a metallic groan, revealing a space that stank of chemicals and something darker, more ominous. Detective Thea Blackwood held her breath as crime scene technicians moved in, their camera flashes illuminating what she already knew they would find: evidence of violence carefully contained and nearly erased. "Luminol is lighting up most of the floor," Samira reported, her face grim behind her protective mask. "Someone tried to clean it thoroughly, but you can't remove all traces of blood, not from concrete." In the corner stood an easel and paint supplies, high-quality oils, fine brushes, canvas stretchers. A small space heater showed signs of having been used recently. "An artist's studio," Thea murmured, "or a forger's workshop." Back at the precinct, Thea assembled the fragmented timeline on a large evidence board. Evelyn's declining mental health, the mysterious offshore payments, the forged provenance documents, and now a hidden studio space with evidence of violence. Her phone rang, the lab with results from paint particles found in the blood sample on the picture frame. "The composition matches paint found in the storage unit," the technician confirmed. "Custom mixed oils with rare pigments typically used in art restoration." Another piece clicked into place. By late afternoon, Thea had officers retracing the movements of all 4 suspects. Vincent Hargroves. Dinner party guests confirmed his presence until 11 p.m., but his whereabouts for the next 3 hours remained unaccounted for, despite his claims of being home in bed. Phone records placed his mobile near the Montgomery estate at 1:23 a.m. Nathaniel Montgomery's alibi began to crumble when credit card records showed his room key at the Langham hadn't been used until 4:17 a.m. the night of his mother's disappearance, despite security footage showing him entering the hotel at 11 p.m. A gap of 5 hours. Luciana's wedding preparation alibi held firm, with multiple family members confirming her presence throughout the weekend. But her financial records told another story: regular deposits to her account that matched the pattern of withdrawals from Evelyn's offshore account. As for Dominic Reeves, his hospital alibi checked out, yet something still troubled Thea. A conversation with his daughter's nurse revealed he had stepped out for air for nearly 2 hours during the critical time frame. At sunset, Thea returned to the Montgomery estate with a forensics team to conduct a more thorough search of the grounds. As darkness fell, they concentrated on the area behind the gardener's shed. "Ground-penetrating radar is picking up something," a technician called out, pointing to an anomaly on the screen, about 4 feet down, near the old oak tree. But before they could investigate further, Captain Emerson arrived with news that changed everything. "We found Evelyn Montgomery's passport in Vincent Hargrove's safe," he reported, along with handwritten letters between him and Nathaniel Montgomery dating back 3 years. They've been plotting something together. Thea stared at the copies of the letters Emerson handed her, feeling the case realign in her mind. "Vincent and Nathaniel were working together," she said slowly. "But the blood evidence, the timeline, something's still missing." She turned back toward the house, her gaze landing on the gardener's shed once more. Something about its meticulous organization had bothered her from the start. The tools hanging on the wall were arranged not just neatly but specifically, forming a pattern that had initially escaped her notice. "I need to look inside that shed again," she told Emerson, already moving across the lawn. Inside, Thea examined the back wall more carefully, noting how certain tools were positioned to conceal a seam in the wooden paneling. When she pressed against it, a hidden compartment slid open, revealing a space just large enough to hide something or someone. And there, wrapped in protective cloth, was what Thea had been searching for all along. A painting identical to the one hanging in Evelyn's gallery, the one with the bloodstain on its frame. Except this version bore a signature in the corner that made Thea's breath catch. "Got you," she whispered, reaching for her phone to call for backup. All this time, it was hiding, in plain sight. The Montgomery Estate's drawing room crackled with tension as Detective Thea Blackwood stood before the 4 suspects seated in the same positions as during their first interview. Outside, police vehicles lined the circular driveway, their emergency lights painting the evening sky in alternating flashes of red and blue. "Thank you all for coming," Thea began, her voice steady and controlled. "I've asked you here because the case of Evelyn Montgomery's disappearance is now officially a homicide investigation." Nathaniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Luciana gasped softly. Vincent remained impassive, while Dominic stared at his weathered hands. "One of you said to me, 'Search all you want,'" Thea continued, pacing slowly before them. "So that's exactly what I did. And what I found was an elaborate conspiracy involving art forgery, blackmail, and murder." She turned to face them directly. "Evelyn Montgomery was diagnosed with early onset dementia 6 months ago, a condition she kept private from all but her closest confidants. As her condition progressed, someone took advantage of her declining mental state to begin replacing original pieces in her collection with forgeries." Thea moved to an easel covered with a cloth. The forgeries were masterful, created by someone with intimate knowledge of the originals and exceptional artistic skill. She pulled away the cloth to reveal the painting from the gardener's shed. "Someone like you, Dominic." The gardener's expression remained unchanged. "I studied art restoration in my youth," he said quietly, "before my daughter's medical bills consumed my life." "Your daughter's treatments at Boston Children's Hospital," Thea noted. "Experimental procedures not covered by insurance. Procedures that mysteriously became affordable around the same time forgeries began appearing in Evelyn's collection." Dominic said nothing, but his shoulders sagged slightly. "But you weren't working alone," Thea continued, turning to Luciana. "As Evelyn's assistant, you had access to her provenance documents, her schedule, her home. You created the digital trail for the forgeries, while managing Evelyn's increasingly erratic behavior as her condition worsened." Luciana's composure cracked. "She was like a mother to me," she whispered. "I only wanted to help her maintain her dignity while securing my future. The forgeries were supposed to be temporary, just until she died naturally," Thea finished. "But someone grew impatient." She turned to Vincent and Nathaniel. "You two have been communicating for years, planning to acquire Evelyn's collection by whatever means necessary. Vincent provided the connections to sell the original artworks on the black market, while Nathaniel stood to inherit everything else upon his mother's death." Vincent's smirk returned. "A fascinating theory, Detective. But where's your proof? You found Evelyn's passport in my safe. I'm her art dealer. She often left documents with me for safekeeping." "The proof," Thea replied calmly, "is in a microscopic bloodstain on a picture frame. Blood that DNA testing confirms belongs to Evelyn Montgomery." She approached Vincent, her voice hardening. "You were too arrogant to notice it when you rehung the painting after moving her body. Too confident in your perfect crime to check every detail." Vincent's smile faltered. "What happened that night wasn't planned," Thea continued. "Evelyn discovered the forgeries during a moment of clarity. She confronted you, Vincent, when you came to the house after your dinner party. The argument escalated. You struck her in anger, not intending to kill her, perhaps, but the result was the same." "You have no evidence of this," Vincent said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We have your phone pinging near her house at the time of death. We have your DNA on a cufflink found in the storage unit where you and Nathaniel transported her body. We have paint particles matching those in your private studio, embedded in the blood sample." Thea's voice remained steady. "And as we speak, officers are excavating an area behind the gardener's shed where ground-penetrating radar detected a recent disturbance." The room fell silent except for Luciana's soft weeping. "Search all you want," Thea echoed Vincent's arrogant challenge. "Those were your words. Your confidence that we wouldn't find the truth. But a tiny bloodstain told us everything you tried to hide." 6 months later, Detective Thea Blackwood stood alone in the Montgomery Gallery, now part of the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, as stipulated in Evelyn's will. The painting with the blood-stained frame had been restored and hung in a position of honor. As Thea studied it, a museum curator approached. "Beautiful, isn't it? We've verified all the pieces in the collection now." "All authentic?" Thea asked. The curator hesitated. "Mostly, but the interesting thing is some of the forgeries were actually more valuable than the originals. Dominic Reeves wasn't just copying, he was creating masterpieces of his own." Thea stared at the painting before her, noticing for the first time that the subject's eyes bore a striking resemblance to Evelyn Montgomery's. She leaned closer to examine the signature, a chill running down her spine as she realized the truth hidden in plain sight all along the final twist in Evelyn Montgomery's tragic story.